there's so many people in the market that have those soft skills,
Right.
whereas if you don't like work on those together, I definitely think like
Is it possible for big tech companies to have any type of agility when it comes to software engineering? What about companies like Microsoft? Is Microsoft too big to have any type of agility, or is it all basically waterfall throughout the company? Hi, my name's Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In this video, I was joined by Jade Wilson, who's a Senior Software Engineer at Microsoft, and I thought this conversation was so awesome because we have very different experiences because of where we work within Microsoft. In this video, I was explaining to Jade how I work with more platform teams over the past few years. Jade, on the other hand, ends up working more customer-facing, which is really cool because we have very different types of interactions with respect to how we build software. Jade is also a very successful content creator. She's very big on LinkedIn. She has a newsletter, and she's a YouTube creator as well. I think that you're really going to enjoy this video, and I'd appreciate it if you could leave some comments below if you want to see more material like this. Thanks, sit back, and enjoy. I know, like we were just mentioning, like you like to focus on Agile, right? You like to focus on DevOps. I know you talk about hiring, recruiting, all these, you talk about a lot of different things, which is great, but how do you find like kind of steering your content, or I don't know, like how to balance it?
I think like I'm definitely deviating more towards like I'm definitely deviating more towards like the like talking side, and I think that is just because I've gotten really comfortable with it. Whereas like the coding side, it's something that I'm working on, but it's like more in the background because it's much like it takes much longer to do.
Right.
So it's kind of like just prioritizing. Okay, well, like I've kind of set myself like a goal of basically trying to post like once a week, and that's the goal that I've been trying to set. And it's been that thing of okay, well, it might not be the best now, but it's slowly getting better, and it's like I can see like the improvements are getting better. And whenever I've got like an idea for what I want to do for either a blog or a video, then I just write it down of like these are the ideas that I've got, and then I start planning out like I start planning out like high level like areas of for that video like of what I want
Yeah.
to cover. So at the moment I've got a few things lined up, such as the next video is like how the stocks work at a big tech company, because that's something that when I joined Microsoft, like I had no idea how stocks worked, and I
Yep.
found it really confusing. So it's just a little breakdown of okay, this is what they mean, like what's the difference between vested and unvested stock, and like how do you actually get what do you get in terms of cash, like basically
Right.
compensation wise. And then like I slowly just start breaking it down by titles, and then I've got titles to talk about, and then I talk about it in the video, and then I then write it down in the blog. That's the way that it seems to work, and it all kind of comes together all at once at the end. Um, and then I've got a few videos that I want to do regarding like integration testing and using integration tests to refactor code when
Cool.
code isn't necessarily written in a way that you would unit test it,
Yep.
and then basically saying, okay, well, now you've got these integration tests, you can then refactor it so you can write good unit tests for it.
I love
And
it.
then
Yep.
because I think a lot of people get like they start writing unit tests for something that isn't necessarily designed in a way that should be unit tests, and it's like, okay, well, let's take a step back, let's not do that, and let's write it in a way that maybe we could write unit tests for.
Yeah. The first step ends up being they go, oh, like we have this code, we're not happy with it. We'd like to refactor it or rewrite it or whatever. Like do some heavy lifting with it. Let's go unit test the crap out of it. And then they do it, and then they're like, cool, now go touch all the code, and it's like you might not have picked the right type of test for what you're about to go do. So I think that's a really cool topic.
Yeah, so that's what I've been working at the moment. But then it's literally just been like planning it out, and I want to have good examples so I can say, okay, like this is how you could reflect. This is how it looks, and it's getting there. It's getting there at the moment. So I'm really I'm happy with the way that it's looking, and
Nice.
now that it's getting there, that should be a good series.
Cool.
And then I've done a few things regarding like one of the areas that I'm really, really interested in with regards to Agile and DevOps is the actual, it's not really about like Agile like Agile is a kind of buzzword that's used a lot of the time. It's more
Agile.
about it's more about like what is the best like way of delivering software for the context that you've got.
Yes.
Because context is different and context is important. So like not everything fits like Scrum like delivery, for example, and something might fit actually more like a Kanban style approach. And then not every and then sometimes you could actually work in like a waterfall way if you've done it repeatedly before. Like if you're
Right.
doing like especially with like deliveries where you're like installing things like Azure and you're moving something from on-prem to Azure. That's a very like repeatable process. You just need to apply it to a new customer. And so you can't say like one type of delivery is the right way of delivering things.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's a really
and so
good
it's
insight for sure. Because a lot of people will, I hear it and read it a lot more now where it's like agile has failed, like agile doesn't work. And it's like, are you saying that because you picked Scrum or you picked Kanban or some implementation and you're saying, look, it doesn't work across everything? And it's like, I don't know if anyone ever said that. Like, you're kind of, I feel like people are making this argument that's not anything someone claimed. So the fact that you said, like, you like focusing on agile, but it could be these different types of like flavors of agile, or it could be not even agile at all if that happens to be the better process. I think that's super cool.
And I think like a lot of the times people really try and focus on the process without any of the actual like values of what it means.
Yes.
And so they focus on, okay, let's do Scrum, but let's just do like the like events. So we're going to do a retro, we're going to do a review, we're going to do planning, and we're going to do the daily Scrum, like the daily Scrum. And there's no like heart there. There's no like, there's no actual like Scrum is like set upon like values of like
Right.
openness, courage, respect, and things like that. And that is just not there. And they're just following the process for the process sake. And like they're kind of been forced into doing that process, which kind of removes a lot of that like actual like ownership that the team have.
Right.
Um, and so it's all about working with the team to figure out what it is that they want. Because if they're being forced to say, like, either do story points or they're being forced to not do story points, then they're not making this decision what's best for them.
Right.
And yes, there's a balance that needs to be had with the team and the rest of the departments
Of
of,
course.
okay, we need to build a relationship there, like of trust. But like I think sometimes like there's external factors that kind of solve the problem for the team, and that's not the right way to go about it sometimes.
Right. It's interesting. John Cricket, obviously. I was just talking with John the other day, and one of the things that came up in the conversation was like, I can't remember the exact scenario, but he was talking about working with, I suppose, some type of PM role where they were saying like, they're certified as a Scrum Master, and they're like, well, we have to do retros, and I guess the way that they were structuring it was not efficient. So like he firmly believes like that retros are valuable, but he asked them like, well, why? Like, why are we doing this particular meeting? And they didn't have a good reason for it. It was just like, well, I'm certified in this. That's what you do in this process. And as you were explaining that, I thought I've seen this before. It was really cool to hear John say it. And this idea that people are taking like the process, which is almost defeating the point of what I feel like a lot of these agile processes were supposed to be solving. It's not just to have a process. It's like, this is an implementation that helps us get these values that we believe in. And if you don't have the why behind why you're doing the ritual, the different process, the cadence, whatever it happens to be, then I just feel like, yeah, you missed all of the value, and it probably feels worse.
And you tend to find with that as well is, okay, you go through these motions, you have these meetings, but you don't really get the maximum output that you would get from these meetings of, okay, well, a retrospective should be really about like, is there anything that we can do to be better next time? Is there
Right.
anything that like we can improve on this process? What things went wrong? And yes, sometimes, like you can have a little bit of complaining, and that's absolutely perfectly healthy for a team. It's sometimes a good thing for them to vent. But they need to feel like they can make actionable change, and they also need to feel like if they say something that is wrong, that is maybe like, a business problem, that they can actually, there's something that can be done about that as well.
Right. You're
So
not in a vacuum saying like, this is really challenging. This is kind of, it sucks for our team to have to do this. Now we're just venting and it's like, cool. Like, see you next week, or in 2 weeks from now, we can vent again. It's like, it's okay to, I had teams where like we were venting all the time, but we would always use that to drive action. We're like, this is frustrating us. Okay, good. We got that off our chest. What are we going to do about it? Like, who do we need to talk to? What's the action that happened? Because if you don't do that, people would say like, oh, you downward spiral if you're only talking negative. And it's like, you do if you're not taking action. But like, we would fuel everything we did with like, we don't like we're uncomfortable with this. We don't want to be uncomfortable. What can we do? And retros were awesome for us in that regard.
one of the things that like I did quite mistakenly when I started, like the first time I was a Scrum Master, um, is I tried to take too much of that kind of responsibility and ownership of things.
Okay.
When I was a Scrum Master, and I thought, okay, well, I can take this action and I can try and unblock the team from that. When actually, what I really should have been doing is pushing it back on the team on what can you do to unblock
Right.
this? What can you do to make this better? To get that, because by doing the thing that I did before, I was
Mhm.
making the team more reliant on me to kind of
Right.
unblock those things, to remove those impediments. Whereas really, I should have been making the team less reliant on me and making them be the ones to resolve them themselves. And actually, you find like when you do that and you start being a bit more pushback to the team, get them to unblock themselves, they become a lot more like, self-sustainable and like more efficient together, and that self-organizing culture that you want to embody.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good observation. And I, not my current team. I just switched teams at the beginning of this year, but the last team I was managing, this was actually a challenge for me where I came in as the manager and I was like, I'm not here to go like disrupt everything you're doing because I think that's a huge mistake. But I am there to try and help everyone improve. And I don't like saying agile only because I think it carries so much weight and people get it confused. So I just like saying I like continuous improvement because I think that's what agile is actually about. Just it's a little bit less painful to have conversations where people get heated about it. So continuous improvement. But when I tried to push back on the team a lot to say, hey, like let's talk about the challenges you're facing. And I was finding that people weren't speaking up a lot. And I was like, how do I balance exactly as you said? I don't want to just do the like, not do the work for them, but for the retro, do the work for them. Like, hey, I noticed that this was a big pain point. I need them to do it so that they can go, look, I identified a pain point. Other people on the team agree with this. I want to propose a solution. And we can see that our input is being heard and we're acting on it. So I found that very challenging in the last team because not a lot of responses were coming forward and I didn't want to step on feet. So
How did you manage to kind of overcome that?
yeah, it was, I don't know. I want to admit, like, I don't think that I ever overcame it, but I think a couple of things were going on. The team, a lot of people on the team were either junior or like relatively new to Microsoft. So I think over time it started to get better. Certainly not to and this isn't their fault or anything, but certainly not to a point where I felt like people could speak about anything and be like, heck yeah, we're gonna like make this better. Because I'd talk in one-on-ones and I would hear that they still had pain points and stuff like, oh, the builds take too long or whatever it happened to be, like some kind of challenges. And I would remind them like, hey, it's a great topic for the retro. Um, I I started to interject a little bit and kind of say things like, I heard like from multiple people in one-on-ones like this was a bit of a challenge. Like, so when we would go do the retro, we used in DevOps, like Azure DevOps, there's like the virtual like sticky note board to put your kind of like why wish wonder or like start stop
Yeah,
continue.
we was using that in short term helps as well. It's pretty
Cool.
good, to be fair.
Yeah. So I was using that, and I would start to kind of seed some of the ideas, like, hey, like I noticed this, and then when we'd start to talk about it, I was at least getting more responses, so that was helpful, I thought. But I think what was still missing by the end of it was I didn't feel like enough people were coming forward with the original ideas. Like they started to have that reliance on me, or they always had the reliance on me, I guess. But
Yeah, it is quite a challenge to like remove that reliance. I found like one thing that worked really well in places that we did in the past was kind of switching it up between members who was going to run the board like the next week to try
yeah,
and
you give
to try
some
and
like
like
some responsibility to people, right?
yeah, that seemed to work really well in my old company. We did that quite a lot, and that was good. Because I was a lead engineer there, and I didn't want to be the one to always run the board because as much as I like facilitation, it can be quite when like um there's always a challenge with remote where like if someone is the same person running things time and time again, like it can get quite monotonous.
Yep.
Um, I don't know if you found the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you work mostly remotely?
I do. And so I started like, and this is actually maybe a cool segue too, because I want to hear about some of your Microsoft journey and like the probably day in the life. I think would be super cool. I know every day is maybe not the same, but I did switch teams recently. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but the previous team I was on, everyone was remote. The so I ran two feature crews out of a bigger team, and everyone on my feature crews was remote. A couple of other people from the bigger team, they'd go into the office periodically, um, but those are the people that I would already be interacting with on Teams anyway. Like I didn't have a good reason to go in. So if my entire team was remote, I live like 30 to 40 minutes away from the office. I'm like, it's just not worth it for me to go in just to get on Teams calls. So for about 3 years, I didn't go into the office. I went into the office like a couple times. And the new team that I'm on, they actually do have people that go in not every day, but like consistently a couple times a week. So I'm kind of trying to get back into the mindset of like, cool, like how can I make sure that I can be present for some of that? I love working remote. I don't know, the flexibility is great as a manager, especially working with people in China, not so much in India, but if there's different time zones and stuff, like I want to make sure that I have flexibility for work life balance. So if I have to stay late for meetings with China, I encourage my team, like, if you're doing the same thing, don't work like a 12-hour day. Or if you happen to, because that's the most convenient thing, like the next day, like start late or end early. Like you need to balance that. So I love that flexibility, but I'm starting tomorrow actually. I'm going to be trying to go into the office on Wednesdays.
Are you like M1, M2, M3? Which one which level
I
are
guess
you?
I think it would be M1. So like for
Yeah,
levels,
okay.
it would be like a 65 at like principal, like the first level principal.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why I asked is just because I was trying to figure out whether or not you do like you have a single team or do you have multiple? Do you
Oh
watch
yeah,
multiple
right.
teams?
It would be one single team.
Yeah.
And I use the word feature crew. I don't know if that's necessary. Like I've heard this is the second team that I've been on where we have feature crews that are just more like project areas, but yeah.
Yeah, so just I guess to explain for people who aren't from Microsoft, you kind of the structure is typically you have like a crew, and then if correct me if I'm wrong, and then you have like a manager for that crew, which is an M1, and then you have an M2 which like covers the M1s, and then you have like an M3 that covers the M2s. Is that I think that's right,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting though. At Microsoft, I've not heard M1, M2, M3. I've seen like if I were to look at like Evil levels, can't speak levels. FYI, there we go. If you're looking at the site that shows you like the compensation differences and all that, I think for like Amazon and Google, I've seen that, and they might even say it for Microsoft. But I think like so for me, it would just be principal software engineering manager. Then there's uh, principal group. I think it's group engineering manager. So we
Hmm.
call them gems. I think that's the first like sort of M2 that you get, because then you become a manager of managers. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so like with my boss, he just recently got promoted from an M1 to an M2, but the level I don't know if the level like changed at all. It's kind of like it's pretty much it can be the same level, but you just have different responsibilities. But yeah, so I'm not sure how it all works.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm not there. I think my boss actually just got promoted to like a partner level, which is pretty cool. I don't know numerically what that is. I just know it's definitely above mine. He's awesome. So it's been cool to switch teams and have like yeah, a bit of a change. So
What
definitely
is the
curious.
reason for switching?
Um, it was a totally interesting, like coincidental opportunity. So I was not looking, so I'll say that, because I was telling my team like I wasn't looking because I felt like I betrayed them almost, but I don't. Part of me is like there's some things that we do in our careers that sometimes they might look selfish, and sometimes they might be selfish, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It sounds kind of funny. I think I've had a difficult time with this throughout my life.
I think it's one of those things though, like ultimately, like you have to do the right thing for you. And
Yep.
I felt quite a lot of guilt when I left my old company as well, like when because I, when I was like leading a team at that point and I was just leaving them like and I felt really bad until like, I saw who was like, coming on and I was like, okay, great, they're in great hands.
Right.
But you feel like responsible, don't you? You feel like responsible for like you've helped like get them to this point. You've done all this work with them, and then you're just going. But like the important thing to remember is that they are going to be okay. They're going to be like they're going to get great like replacement as well. Like who's going to be just as great, and you get to do what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the exact feeling, was like, oh, I feel guilty. They did get a great replacement EM, so I'm super happy about that. I was actually talking with him before because he was on the team already, not my team directly, like my report, but within the bigger team. And I think he was interested in management. It was like the perfect opportunity for him. So that was great. I was thinking about the people that I was kind of leaving on that team, and I was like, I feel like in their career development, they're all on the right track. Like, I'm not walking away from something being like, oh man, I wish I could have. Like, I wish I did more. I was like, this is actually good. So I wasn't looking. I did have a couple of things coming up that started to feel a little bit more frustrating. This is no one's fault either, but for context, so you worked at smaller companies than Microsoft before. I worked at a startup that was like 8 people that grew to 300 for 8 years before Microsoft. So kind of got to see the tiny company to small business. And the I think the thing that I started to feel was that within our organization, I started to feel like I didn't have a lot of I don't know if influence is the right word. I felt like I couldn't do my job effectively because I didn't have a lot of uh, sort of direction to provide. It was kind of like I'm just getting the requests and like kind of funneling them through. I don't know if that really makes sense, but autonomy kind of in decision making that started to feel like it was going away. And again, that's not because of anyone's fault. And I started to realize this, and the reason I said this was so coincidental is that I'm not the kind of person that will go take immediate action for change if it's uncomfortable. Like, self-admitted, won't do it. But I remember telling my wife one morning, I said, I'm starting to feel like this is like it's kind of interfering with my ability to like not be happy, but like to feel productive and be engaged. And I had a meeting that was scheduled for that afternoon, and it was literally my current new boss that was like, "Hey, do you want to like interview to be on our team?" It was the most coincidental thing ever. And I remember I thought the meeting was for something else, and I was just like, I think this would be stupid for me to say no. It's just too much of a coincidence. So that's the reason for the team change. It was definitely coincidence.
Yeah, I can complete like completely see what you mean by like when you go from like a company that was like, start growing to Microsoft. It's not so much that like you don't get to do a lot of things. You get to make a lot of impact, but
Right.
it's all very tightly like controlled into one specific area, isn't it? It's like you only have influence on a very like small part, whereas in like a startup, there's like so many possibilities of where you can go. You can go here, you can go there, you can do whatever it is you want. Whereas like you've got like parameters you kind of stuck into, if that
Yeah,
makes
and
sense.
like that part is extremely important to mention, right? It's like the impact is there. You're going to be working on stuff like uh just as an example for people listening, it's like I have people on my team that they might go roll out a change that could affect traffic for literally trillions of requests per day. Like the impact is there. Like you're doing things that have a big surface area impact and that can drive a lot of value. But Jade, as you're saying, it's like we have all these teams that need to work together and be cohesive, accomplish all of their goals based on semester planning. So like you end up being like very coupled to these other teams and making progress. Like you end up being tightly knit. So yeah, it sometimes it feels like there's not a lot of not as much flexibility, and that to me was getting more and more reduced. So that was kind of a crappy feeling. But what about you? Like what is you got into Microsoft? What did that look like? And I guess like I've been talking a bit about the manager perspective as a senior software engineer. Like, what does your day look like, and how does that all fit?
So I initially came in as a software engineer too, and it was in 2022, so it's a couple of years back now, um, and like the way that our teams work is we do like projects which are typically like around 3 to 6 months for different customers. So in the UK, you typically don't do there isn't much product development as much. We don't work on specific products,
Okay,
but we work with like our customers who are wanting to use our products with their products. So it's very much a we're very generalist in our role.
cool.
We have to work with our customers' languages to help them. Like so it's so there's two like industries under industry solutions. There's industry solutions delivery and there's industry solutions engineering. And
Okay.
industry solutions delivery is typically things that have already been scoped. It's quite clear what it is they need to deliver for the customer. It's been done before. Whereas what we do is we're typically doing stuff that hasn't been done before, and
Mm,
we're doing it like we're typically doing it in Azure. So at the moment there's a lot of focus on Azure AI, and there's a lot of focus on OpenAI, there's a lot of focus on Azure ML. So we're doing a lot of things regarding exploring options for our customers to use those products. And we're basically doing a lot of proving whether or not they can do something or whether or not they can't do something. And so um, a lot of our team is basically working with our customers to do that, and we work together with their engineers so that when we leave, they have the skills necessary in Azure to be able
right.
to do it themselves.
And these are external customers, right? Like strictly
Hmm.
external? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And that's a probably a good maybe just thing to mention. So Jade, you work like specifically with external customers. The two teams that I've been on at Microsoft do not at all. Like what we do will impact external customers, but our like when I talk about customers from my team's perspectives, they're other partner teams. So we end up being a platform. So deployment that I was on before, our customers are the other teams that have services. And now that I'm doing, it's called the Cafe team, which is a pretty cool name. But so we focus on routing and things like that. Our partners are the other teams that have to have traffic routed. But if we weren't routing properly, that will affect the end user. But just the customer framing is kind of interesting. So it's cool that you get to work with like truly external customers. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good, and we have quite close contact with them. We have daily contact with them, so we get to get a
Awesome.
lot of feedback and validation of what it is they want, for what it is that we're delivering, which is really really good. And the good thing about the way that our team works as well is that we we get projects, and then we typically get a little bit of downtime between the next project, so we can
Okay.
either, use that time to upskill in what we're likely going to be working on next, or we get to learn like something new within the confines. So at the moment, I'm still really trying to focus on learning a little bit more about data engineering and like Azure, working with Azure and ML, for example, because we typically try and we are Microsoft, so we try and use Microsoft products
Yep.
for the stuff that we do, because that's typically what we like recommend. But like obviously, if the customer has a requirement to use, so recently we had to use Databricks within Azure rather than using Fabric, and that's what we had to
But
do,
that's the
for example.
requirement, right? So you kind of have to go with that. So I think this is interesting because I was thinking about, you are very focused in on agile, right? Like this is a really
Hmm.
big focus for you. I love working, like I was saying, like continuous improvement, which is agile. But I find, for me at least, with probably more like as a platform team, it feels very challenging to embrace a lot of these things. But once you mentioned, because you said, I don't know if it's exactly a daily basis, but at least pretty regularly, you get to interact with customers, like truly end users. How does that fit into like your team's ability to like be agile and maybe adopt some of these processes like Kanban, Scrum, or any other flavor? Like, what does that look like?
Uh, so the so it really depends on the customer and the
Okay,
level of interaction that they have, and like the skills within the team, like the customer's team. So it's really good when like in our previous project we've had quite like daily interactions with them, like we have daily meetings with them, talk through what we've done. We give quick feedback. If we've got issues, we can say, okay, we've got an issue with this, can you give us some insights on that? So stuff like that is really, really useful. It can be quite difficult, like sometimes, to get the exact like feedback that we need in terms of like the things that we're working towards, and that's just because like we might not necessarily have the right stakeholders in those
okay.
meetings. So we work a lot with the developers, and they have an idea of what it is they want, but they're not like the final like decision maker for what the actual business requirement is sometimes. So with a previous project, I'll quickly talk about that. We were doing more like a Scrum based like delivery. So that worked well in that we had daily interactions with the developers, but then we would have like we would still have our like review where the stakeholders would come and still be able to contribute to actually what it is that we were delivering. They would still come to the planning, so they would say what it is that they wanted, um, and some of the refinements as well, because we split it out into technical refinements and backlog, like product style requirements,
Sure.
because we kind of realized actually some of the stakeholders didn't need to be in these meetings,
Which
and
is good.
so
That's a good optimization, right? Where you're able to look at who's attending, like where the value of the conversation is. Because again, for other people, if you're watching this, right, and you're like, well, I don't, agile just doesn't work. Like these meetings are so ineffective. It's like, no one said you had to do it like this exact way. If you can split it up so you don't have half the group, half the stakeholders being like, why am I here wasting my time? I'm not getting any value. Change it. Like you can change it to make it more effective. So that's cool.
yeah. And so what we kind of did was we had our features, and we we basically said, okay, these are the things that we need to deliver before like the end of our like working together. And we would just literally focus on like the features that we would break down the features that we were going to be doing in the next couple of sprints. Um, we would wireframe them out. We would then like talk about, like we would have our own refinements where we would technically like agree, okay, these are the technicalities that we need to do, and this is like the like the system flow that we need to design, and then we would like validate like the actual like flow with the customer. And so it wasn't like okay, we needed to do this here and then. We got what we needed when we needed it,
Right.
to get the work done. And actually, it was funny because by doing it that way, we actually delivered more than what we initially set out to do, because we didn't confine ourselves.
Right. That's cool. I have a like, because I don't know the exact structure of the team, right? So you're a senior software engineer. When you're talking about the interactions with the customers and that kind of thing, who else is present? Like, so from their side, you were mentioning like you'll have their developers, and for some of the other meetings that you have, their other stakeholders will be present from the Microsoft side. So people directly on your team, like, are there junior developers that also get to be present in those conversations? What does that look like?
So we don't, in our team, we don't necessarily have any juniors at the moment. So like the lowest level we've got is software dev SDE2.
Sure. Okay.
And that, I think the reason more is just why, because they want, like, because of the customers that we have, like, because we're dealing with customers on a daily basis and we're having like customer facing interactions, they want to have like, you know, a minimum like level of like architecture skills in Azure and things like that, just because we are coming in as experts in Azure.
Right.
So I think that's the main reason why, but I can't say for sure. I think but I think so.
Which, I mean, I think that makes sense, right? It's like I I don't we haven't talked about this together ahead of time or anything, but uh maybe it's worth kind of bouncing some ideas back and forth. When I think about like a team that's like kind of healthy in terms of being able to grow and have longevity, like a balance across levels is helpful, right? If you've never put teams together, you might go, why wouldn't you just pick the best, highest level people and stuff them all into a team? Like, wouldn't you get the best possible results? And it's like maybe, but also not from like a longevity, career growth perspective, opportunities. Like, you need to have balance, and having different levels can be helpful. And that means bringing on junior people can be helpful. But it's not always that simple because, Jade, as you were saying, if you guys have the expectation that you need to be able to, like, you're the experts, you need to be able to get the customer requests, start delivering and being ready for that. I could imagine that if you had junior people, like, it would be challenging to say, like, you got to start and be super effective because we have these deadlines, we're working with the customer. Is that kind of your perspective, or do you have different thoughts maybe about like a structure of a team?
I definitely think like it's good to have a balance. I think, you know, where possible, you know, it's great. It's a great way to bring you know, people like it's a great way of like building the next, like, you
Sure.
know, generation of software engineers, and I think that's a really important thing to do. I think like the it's just a unfortunate case, like with certain teams, that they just need like certain like architecture skills. Like it wasn't a requirement that you had to have like, you know, like loads and tons of Azure knowledge,
Sure.
like in my team, like when you started, because you can get trained up on it. I think it was just a case of they were just looking for a certain baseline level, so that they knew that like someone could easily pick it up like within, like, you know, a few months. Um,
It's like there's
uh,
less risk with it, I guess. Like, that's part of it. So you don't have, hey, we have a new person. Like, we would always hope that new people can ramp up fast. We'll do whatever we can to help with that. But I guess it is a bit of a risk versus like we have someone that's already at this level. Like,
but it's not. I guess it's not just like the technical skill side. It's the like soft skill side, the communication skill
yeah,
side, that that all like contribute to you going up in the levels.
yeah,
So I think there's a combination of that as well, and because you are like dealing with customers on a like quite often, those skills are more important from like our side.
that's cool. And you mentioned like the soft skill part, this is like there's like two themes aside from just talking about C# that I always love to talk about, and one of them in particular is like soft skills and software engineering. And it's been kind of tricky in more recent times to find examples aside from just like within your team, like how do you have like, how do you demonstrate your soft skills? Why are they important for collaboration? But you have a very good a very good situation to be able to talk about the value of soft skills aside from stuff that I regularly talk about, and that's, like you said, interacting with customers. Like, can you share a little bit more maybe about the different types of soft skills or why that's so valuable when you're having these interactions?
So I think the the important thing about it is you really have to build a trusting relationship with customers. You have to make them feel like they are safe in your hands. You are going to
Okay.
deliver what it is that they want. And when you're having daily interactions with them, like the the best way to do that is to build those relationships, be able to explain effectively what it is that you have created for them, showing them what it is that you've created, explaining the value of why it is that you've created, understanding what it is that they've actually asked you to deliver. There's another thing in our kind of department. There's a lot of fluidity and a lot of
Okay.
lack of structure, and that can be quite difficult when you're coming in uh, as a new engineer. I always think for a new engineer coming into the industry, it's for most engineers that come into the industry, having a baseline level of structure is really, really beneficial for them.
Right.
Whereas sometimes the way that we work can be a little bit chaotic because sometimes our projects are 6 weeks long. You don't have time to make a really good structure for that.
Sure.
And so it's kind of there's a lot of chaoticness sometimes, and so there's finding a balance there when you have more new people coming into the industry, because they probably need a little bit more structure in that sense most of the time. Not all the time. I've definitely seen juniors and entry level engineers who can just come in and just get running. It's
Full
just that
autonomy, it just happens. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just not as common.
Sure. I agree. Yeah. Um, it's really hard to make statements. You're like, I'm being recorded, and if I say this, someone's going to be like, no, there's an exception to this. It's like this
Yeah, and
happens
that's what
everything.
I try and be really conscious that what I'm saying isn't everyone's experience.
Right.
I'm just saying for the average,
Yep.
for the average person, this is more likely to be a common thing. For someone who is just coming in, there is a reason why people who are contractors who are meant to be self-sufficient are typically have been in the industry for a few years, kind of thing.
Right. Because yeah, they've gone through the motions of it. They have the experience. They kind of know what to expect, right? And it's the same type of thing when I'm telling more junior software engineers, like as they're going through and they're getting interviews or getting into jobs, and you mentor people, so you know all about this, right? I'd be curious to hear your perspective on it. I find that everyone is hyper focused on technical skills, and we're in software engineering, like it's technical, like there's no doubt about that. And I find what's not maybe not focused on a lot, or people forget it, or I don't know, but it's like all the other skills that aren't technical, like sounds kind of ridiculous to say out loud, but like how to be a good human and interact with other humans. Like there are some, like, call them social skills, people skills, whatever, soft skills, I think is the really common way to put it. I find that there's not a lot of focus on that. And I don't know what the answer is, but I've been trying my best just to like keep saying it to people that you can't forget about this stuff, because once you start working, if you've never put any thought into how I communicate, how I collaborate, you might find like, oh crap, this is a lot different than I thought, because I'm not just sitting at my desk looking at a coding word problem and just starting to write code. Like, what are your thoughts on like the people that you've had to coach and mentor, or other people you've seen kind of coming into industry around soft skills?
So it's really interesting that you point about the soft skills, because I've recently had a mentee who has just received an offer from American Express, and one of the things that really stuck out to me was his ability to network.
Cool. Okay.
He he definitely had the like technical ability, and he'd been working on that, but like his ability to network and be someone who the rest of the team wanted to work with, I think definitely like helped in his favor. um it's one of those things where I think unless you are like someone who has technical ability that no one else can do, which is genuinely quite rare, like it's quite rare to get to that point. You're talking like PhD people, you're talking people who can create these really, really like complex, convoluted algorithms that no one else can solve. Unless
Right.
you're that level, then you can't really get away with being like rude, I think.
Right. And
Because
even for those people, it's like, yeah, you might be able to land a job, but like your box of like where you're going to be working is significantly smaller and specifically or yeah, more focused, right? Like it's hyper focused because of that. So that's
yeah, and it's that kind of need of, okay, well, do we unless you're like this like brilliant genius, and there's definitely people there who are out there who fit that mold, and they're definitely needed for like the most optimized like software engineering. The majority of people just don't fit into that camp. Like the majority of software engineering is using stuff that's already there and like repurposing it and then
Yep.
like creating new stuff from it. I think if you're just gonna struggle, like, because there's so many people in the market that have those soft skills,
Right.
whereas if you don't like work on those together, I definitely think like most people can like if you can like identify a baseline level of like technical skill, most people like it's much harder to teach the soft skill side.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Um the point about teaching soft skills is not that's not an obvious one, right? I think maybe I'll back up a little bit. People have said like, "Oh, like if I want to get a job, like what language do I need to learn? What's the tech stack?" And my philosophy has been like, of course, if you happen to pick a tech stack in a language that some company's using, like sure, that's helpful. But in general, and this is kind of throughout the lifetime of your career, the one language or tech stack, like that's not as important as saying like I have these experiences because you'll be able to pick different languages and tech stacks and reapply them. And the companies that can afford to do so, like bigger companies especially, sometimes it's not the case for startups. They know that they can teach you the technical things, right? You know Java, but we use C sharp. Cool. Like, come on board. You know Python, but not C sharp. Like, you can program, but you haven't used C sharp. Cool. Come on board. But the soft skill side, and maybe that's a good takeaway, right? Like, I think for me, I don't know if I really thought about it that way. Teaching the soft skills is not easy. Have
and
you?
and there's and there's a like if you aren't able to teach someone the soft skills part, and there isn't like potential negative consequence of that, in that like yes they are they might be like a great like technical developer, but if they can't communicate with the customer, if they can't like figure out what it is the customer wants and actually say what they're doing in a way that the customer understands it, that's a really, really big problem, like in terms of like delivering stuff. Because
Absolutely.
how do you know like how do you build that trust? How do you build that confidence with the customer? As well as that, like if you can communicate with your team, if you can't actually work with your team, like you're impacted on like how you can teach them. How is it that you're going to make the rest of the team that you're working with a better developers? Like a big part of being a senior is being able to do that. How do you
Absolutely.
progress as a developer if you are kind of stuck not being able to like pass on your knowledge to other people?
Yeah, I can imagine I like to think that I have some type of soft skills, so I can imagine if you like if that was a struggle for someone, right? It would probably feel very frustrating to be a software engineer because you would feel like I'm writing code, it's going up for review, or I'm reviewing people's code, having these design interactions, and like, why is it always so frustrating? Why is it so difficult to communicate why am I think my design is valuable, why I think this code choice is good, or you're reviewing and doing the opposite? Like, why can't I seem to articulate like why I wouldn't use this design, like some of the flaws, some things to look out for? It would probably just feel frustrating all of the time because your ability to communicate, and that goes multiple ways, right? Delivering your message as well as interpreting and understanding other people. It sounds really basic, right? But like, it's a fundamental thing, and that's why I'm saying I feel like it could just be very frustrating as a software engineer to not focus on those.
And it, it's really it's really like hard to kind of like be like, okay, like, you know, just because someone's not learnt this yet, that they can't learn it.
Sure.
However, like generally, like if someone's at least willing to learn, like learn it or be aware of it, rather than just completely say, I don't need to learn this, this is not important to me.
Right.
That's a good sign. Like, you don't have to be perfect at it, you don't have to, I'm definitely not perfect at it. I've spent like the majority of my life really struggling with, like, eye contact, and things that other people find really easy. I'm really,
Sure.
I have really bad social anxiety, but I try, and I know that it's important, kind of thing. Um,
I think that's a probably another really good takeaway is like the fact that, if you were watching this and you're like, if that started to resonate about the soft skills, if you're like, man, like I haven't been doing that, and you're thinking, they just said it's really difficult to like to learn that and to teach someone that, it's like it's not impossible, but like I would say the reason that it's probably difficult is that, like any skill, because truly, these are skills, your communication and your soft skills, right? You need to practice them. You're not like you could read a book, watch videos, and say, these are helpful things that I should keep in mind. But you don't read a book and go, I can communicate with anyone now. Like, you need to practice that, have these different interactions. Those take time. Those take different experiences. They take sometimes having bad interactions where you go, crap, like, why was that so difficult? And reflecting on it and being like, maybe it wasn't just the other person. Like, I should take some responsibility and see, like, maybe I wasn't listening. Maybe um, I wasn't understanding what they were after, and then, changing my message to them. So I think that's probably why it's more challenging.
yeah, and I think another reason why it's more challenging is just if someone doesn't believe it's valuable, then they're not gonna want to learn it. And I think
Yeah.
once you change that opinion, I think is if you say you don't like something, or if you say you hate something, you're always going to hate it, I think.
Right.
And if you say you like something, or if you say, okay, I don't particularly like this thing, but I know it's important, that's a different mindset at that point. You're not going to go into it being like, I'm going to be really bad at this. You're going to be into it, I'm going to try and be the best that I can be
Right.
to do this thing. Like, I think, about a year ago, I said to myself that I hate Python, and like I use it for like any sort of DSA style problem that I solve now, and I use it like in work as well. So it's kind of like it's a different shift of, okay, well, it work it's good for certain scenarios, and
Sure.
I've stopped saying, like, that I hate it. I just madly dislike it in a lot of scenarios.
Decoupling, like the decoupling I don't like it versus it is bad kind of thing. Like, yeah, because if you can say I don't like it, but I understand it's valuable, like, very different. And then, like you said, you were able to kind of shift your perspective. I think maybe one final question for you, because I'm super curious, especially through like mentorship and stuff with soft skills. Do you find that, like you mentioned, if people don't value it, that's another thing where they might not drive change. Do you find that people that you are mentoring and trying to get into industry and things like that, does that seem to be top of mind for them? Do they want that?
Um, it's a mixture.
Okay.
It's so you've got people who genuinely like, see the value of it, have a really big strength in it, and, use it as their strength. And then you have the people who come in and they aren't necessarily as, they they don't really they don't really see it as important.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, the ones who do see it as important are the ones who maybe not aren't necessarily as good at it, but like see its value are the ones who seem to have secured like offers. So
Interesting. That's that is interesting. Yeah, it is important, right? And I think if people are open-minded and understand like it is important, you might need more practice at it. That's okay, but you have to acknowledge it's important first.
I kind of for me there's a few key areas for people who are getting into the industry. There's uh building like projects repeatedly, in a like consistent way, to be able to say, okay, I understand how to work with this language, I understand like how this language works, and they only have to do it in one language. They don't have to like learn loads of different languages. Get good at
Sure.
one language first. The second one is data structure and algorithms, and whilst this isn't necessarily like needed for everything, and you definitely don't need to learn the hard parts of data structure and algorithms, but like understanding what different data structures are is valuable, I think, and understanding how to manipulate them and change them is valuable. And so I always recommend like, just being able to do at least easy sort of lead style code questions is a good thing to do for even just to understand what you're doing with data, because like there's been many mentees that I've worked with that don't really understand like the actual objects that they're creating when they're creating stuff in like, JavaScript, for example. And having an understanding of that is really, really beneficial. And then the third thing is soft skills. So that is another part where I say, okay, well, we need to soft skills and networking. Um, which is that side. And they're like the three main areas I think that are like super important.
Cool. No, and that's good that you're able to focus on that with people, right? Because I'm making assumptions you have like a call it like a, I don't want to say a pipeline of mentees, right? But you've been doing this, and so you get to see kind of like some themes and stuff. So I'm kind of making assumptions because a lot of the people that I'm talking to, it's kind of more scattered versus you're getting a lot more, one-on-one conversations with people. So it is interesting to hear how much they're investing into the technical versus soft skills.
And what's really nice is they're all very different. Like everyone's journey is very, very different. But like, they're very different people. You've got extroverts, you've got introverts, and like they're all like putting in the work to do the things necessary to get those roles, which is really nice to see.
That's super cool. Well, Jade, okay, so I'll make sure that I get links and stuff from you after, but if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way? If you want to, say it for folks, and then like I said, I'll get links from you after. I can put them in the description and all that.
So probably the best way is LinkedIn. So that's what the place where I'm most active, the easiest place to message me. And then I also have a like blog slash newsletter, and I also have a YouTube channel that I like I've started posting to weekly as well. So I'll definitely give the links to Nick for those as well.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. I think people that watch this are going to have a lot of value to take away. I know that one of the things that I've been asked about before is like, what is it like at Microsoft? And I think it's really cool. Like, so you as a senior software engineer are going to have a different experience than me. And you work in a complete, not only a different part of the world, but like a completely different interactions with like customers versus what I'm doing. So I think that was probably helpful for people because I can't offer that type of perspective. So thank you so much. And I look forward to more chats in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.